Welcome to another episode of Strictly Hockey Talk with Tanbeer. And today we're going to go over our top three candidates for the general manager's position for the Vancouver Canucks. In today's video, I will also be going over the president of hockey operations position because we have no clue what's happening with Jim Rutherford's future here in Vancouver. There's rumors out there that the owner is possibly interviewing for the president of hockey operations position as well. So let's get started. The first two guys on my list for a team for a management team in Vancouver are Shane Doan and Lawrence Gilman. Both of these guys have a relationship from the past in Winnipeg. Lawrence Gilman is a more experienced guy between the two. He has been an assistant general manager in Vancouver in the past. He worked for the Toronto Maple Leafs as an assistant general manager and is currently in Columbus. During his time in Vancouver, he handled the cap and the contracts. And believe it or not, those were the two best parts of that Canucks teams. They handled their contracts right. They also managed the cap really well under Lawrence Gilman as the assistant general manager here in Vancouver. He's definitely deserving for a general manager's position, in my opinion. Shane Doan, as president of hockey operations alongside Lawrence Gilman, he's less experienced than Lawrence, but he is well respected around the league. Shane Doan, there's not a bad thing anybody said about Shane Doan. He was a great hockey player when he played for the Phoenix Coyotes, and like people said, just even a better person. And also, you know, he'd set a culture here in Vancouver, in my opinion, alongside Lawrence Gilman. Let's move on. The next management team that I would consider here in Vancouver: Ron Francis and Sam Ventura. And you guys are probably thinking, Ron Francis, really? Why? Why Ron Francis? He wasn't great in Carolina, and he wasn't great in Seattle. The reality is the Vancouver Canucks are far, far away from being a Stanley Cup contender again. And they need patience. They really need patience in their organization. And what the previous management teams have done in Vancouver was not patient. It was trying to fast track things and trying to retool instead of rebuild, and they set themselves back. We need a guy that stays on the path, and even if he's afraid to make the big move, he's collecting assets as he goes. He's collecting young players, he's collecting draft picks, he's letting the players develop in the AHL. That's what they need. And Ron Francis is more of a patient president, I think, that would work in Vancouver. And if you pair him alongside a guy like Sam Ventura, who has, you know, a PhD in data and statistics, like I think that can work. And Sam Ventura has some experience in this league. He's worked with Jim Rutherford in Pittsburgh. And now he's currently in Buffalo, right? And he's doing a thing in Buffalo. So this guy is experienced in two different organizations that have had a success. Like Buffalo is very successful today. And yeah, they've had some rough patches before that, but Sam Ventura is a part of Buffalo Sabres franchise that is finally having success after not being in the playoffs since 2011. In Pittsburgh, he worked under Jim Rutherford, and if I'm not mistaken, he was there when they were winning Stanley Cups. So this guy he knows what he's doing, right? So I think a team of him and Ron Francis, I think that could work. I really do. With his, analytical mind and Ron Francis, hockey mind, I think that can work, especially as a president of hockey operations. I really do believe that Ron Francis can work here in Vancouver if he's allowed to go the patient direction that he had gone in the past with Carolina and Seattle. That's what the Vancouver Canucks need. This is not a 4-year project. This is a 6 to 8 year project, and patience is required. That's why I believe Ron Francis can be that guy. Let's move on to next on my list. Brendan Shanahan and Ryan Johnson. And I don't think there's a guy on my list today that is more qualified than Brendan Shanahan. And, for some reason, he hasn't been interviewed by the Vancouver Canucks. They've interviewed 30 guys, but they haven't interviewed the guys they should be interviewing the most. And that's Brendan Shanahan. And I don't know why they haven't interviewed him. Just look at what he did in Toronto. What he did in Toronto is the blueprint of how to, to turn the Vancouver Canucks around, in my opinion. And yeah, you might say, what has Toronto done? They were getting bounced in the first round every year under Shanahan. Yeah, but they were running into juggernauts every damn year. They're playing Florida's or Boston's or Tampa Bay's every year in the playoffs. And they were a legit perennial contender. They were getting 100 points every year with the core four. So don't tell me that Brendan Shanahan didn't turn that franchise around, because do you remember what the Toronto Maple Leafs were 10 years before Brendan Shanahan got there? Yeah, they were a tire fire, just like what the Vancouver Canucks are today. So yes, Brendan Shanahan is the perfect candidate for this job in Vancouver, and it's mind-boggling that he hasn't been the number one target for this ownership group. I'm guessing it probably has something to do with money, right? Brendan Shanahan's probably not going to be cheap. Probably a $7 million type of contract. But if you really are serious about, bringing the Vancouver Canucks back to its glory days, Brendan Shanahan definitely has to be on the short list of candidates you had to have interviewed. And it's shocking that they didn't even go that route. I think a guy like RJ below Shanahan as a general manager can work. I've always believed that the Canucks need new voices. Voices that are not in this organization today. But if you're going to bring in Shanahan as president of hockey operations and then have a guy like RJ who has been a part of the organization, has been a part of the organization for 3 different regimes, through the Gillis era, through the Benning era, and now through the Rutherford era, I think it could work. I really do. And it seems like everybody in the market believes he's a great guy. He's had success, being the general manager in Abbotsford, right? The Abbotsford Canucks won the Calder Cup last year. That has to do a lot with Ryan Johnson. And then, the media seems to love Ryan Johnson. So I feel like he'd be a good hire below a guy like Brendan Shanahan as a president of hockey operations. I think promoting RJ is something the Canucks should look at, because he's had so many different positions in this organization. He's survived 3 different regimes. He's obviously doing something right. Jim Rutherford believes that he's a great hockey mind. And I think if you have Brendan Shanahan, who has experience in turning, a franchise around, and then you have a young mind like RJ below him, I really believe that can be something that Canucks should look to do. I really do. I don't know if RJ is, analytical in any way. I don't know if he has an analytical mind. I'm sure he's open to it, but I do believe that that a lot of people say good things about him. A lot of organizations have want to talk to him about a general manager's position. Nashville Predators being one. So yeah, let's if they want to go cheap on the GM side and then go big money on the president of hockey operations side, I think that's a tandem that can work, and save Francesco a little bit of money as well. Yeah, that does it for today's episode of Strictly Hockey Talk on YouTube. Please subscribe, please like the video, and I'll see you guys next time.